welcome to the Secret Restaurant Podcast. I wanted to talk about present tense today because within the last 8 months, 6 months even, I've read 2 books that were written in present tense. I find it kind of a polarizing subject matter, especially online when people talk about it or make videos about it. Not so much when I talk about people I know, but it seems like some people, even very avid, frequent readers, seem to despise the present tense. Personally, I actually had the opposite feelings about it when I read these books. Well, one of them, I'll talk about both right now, just so you know up front what books I'm talking about. But the first one I read, I just finished it 3 or 4 days ago. But it's called Bright Lights, Big City by an author named McInerney. I don't know. It's McInerney. And I hadn't actually even heard of it until I read about it, and then I went to Barnes & Noble. It was there, so I bought it, and then literally read the first page, and then read the whole thing in probably 2 days, which is unusual for me. Usually I'm pretty slow with my reading. I'll put stuff down, pick it back up. Novels sometimes take me even a month of stepping away and coming back to it just to get the book fully understood and realized. But this one, it really was easy to read. I'd pick it up, I'd zip through a chapter, I'd be I had a vivid visualization of what the author was talking about. And this book was interesting for 2 reasons, because first, as I've said, it was present tense writing for the most part, except for a couple flashbacks. But secondly, it was written in the second person. So it was written in, the main character was referred to as you. So for many people, that would be 2 strikes on the style department of this book. But like I said, I read it in 2 days, and I feel like I pretty much had visualizations of all the chapters, a clear understanding of the story, but it wasn't necessarily what I would categorize as an easy read, if that makes sense. And so I guess what I wanted to talk about to myself standing here, is think about kind of why I had that experience and why other people's experiences would be different. Because also, I didn't want to say this, but it's worth mentioning. A lot of the times when I do write, I actually do write in present tense myself. So it might just be something that my mind has already been so practiced in doing and reading present tense that I was already prepared to read these scenes and read these chapters. Whereas other people who maybe don't have the same kind of way of thinking or even the way of reading and writing, it might be another step for them to kind of flip from past tense to present tense. Let's say you read 100 past tense books and then you all of a sudden read a present tense book. Does that take another mental exercise that might alienate you from enjoying the story? And vice versa, if you're used to present tense, does past tense make it more difficult for you? When people tell stories about their day or stuff, that's past tense too. If you're catching up with friends and, I'm speaking in present tense now, but if you're catching up with friends and you want to tell them a story of something that happened to you over the work week, of course, the way you tell it, typically because it's in the past, you tell a story in past tense. I don't know. I think that's pretty normal. I guess some people might start with present tense where it's so I'm at work, right? But for the most part, I would say I was at work and this happened in past tense. So it's almost like storytelling just on a nonfiction level or on a natural level is something that already happened. So maybe that's another reason why we as humans are just kind of prone to the past tense storytelling as opposed to present tense. Whereas present tense would be utilized for instruction or for what I'm doing now, which is hypothesizing, describing something that's not necessarily a story that's being told for entertainment. I hope this is making sense. I'm kind of getting off the rails. So One thing I did when I started thinking about this concept is I did look up some famous present tense books, a couple of them. So Hunger Games is present tense. I don't remember that because I read it when I was like 18. But I guess that's present tense, and that's a pretty popular book, pretty famous book. So that was a successful example of it. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, present tense. There's another book that I did actually read a while back, but I think I remember it being present tense. It's called Rabbit Run by John Updike. But just the fact that you can like look up a list and there's just like a limited number of famous ones kind of proves the point overall that it's unusual to be writing a novel in present tense. And I think there can be a bigger discussion about how time works and how present tense can be utilized in a story that uses both present and past tense, but I don't really want to do that right now because I've got books to talk about. But that is something that is worth considering, like just to name drop one, like the opening chapter of A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. That book opens up with a present tense storytelling by this narrator, but then she goes back and like goes into past tense deep histories of her experience with being addicted to stealing things and petty theft. But then it's mostly told present tense, and then it'll go back to these big memories of her experiences struggling with that addiction or illness or whatever you can refer to it as. So the book I have been talking about, Bright Lights, Big City. My first instinct of it was I read it like the first chapter and already had huge comparisons to Bret Easton Ellis's work, particularly Less Than Zero, although I would also make comparisons to American Psycho minus the serial killer aspect to it, because the actual age of the main character is closer in American Psycho than it is in Less Than Zero. But it's funny because maybe I was wondering if it was influenced by those books, but actually this Bright Lights, Big City was published in 1984, which was 1 year before Less Than Zero came out. So it actually was not influenced, obviously, but two books that had kind of had a similar storytelling and a similar kind of vibes, for lack of a better word, came out 1 year apart and probably were written completely without awareness of the other. Except I haven't read the interview, but I do believe that the author of Bright Lights, Big City did interview Bret Easton Ellis at some point later on. So obviously they became aware of each other's work and probably were inspired by each other in the long run of their careers, I would imagine. Just because they're both very interesting authors doing similar things. All right, so Bright Lights, Big City is basically a story about a young kind of professional 24-year-old who is referred to as you, who is working as kind of a fact checker in this publication. He's living in New York City in the 80s, and he kind of is trapped because firstly, he was recently divorced, like his wife left him, and now he's working at this fact-checking job that he really doesn't like and stresses him out, but then also certain addictions in his life are beginning to ruin his social life, his work life, and kind of taking hold of his day-to-day life in a way that is getting in the way of his health and his happiness. Personally, I've read a lot of books, poems, movies that kind of deal with drug addiction, and I didn't think that part of the story was particularly interesting. It is a pretty large part of it. Even in the opening chapter, he's like out in the nightclubs way later than he wants to be, and kind of it shows just how his addiction is kind of at the forefront of his life. Despite my kind of lack of enthusiasm, it does seem like a pretty crucial part to this history that the book is trying to capture, which it wasn't history when it was written, but it seems crucial, like kind of the nightclub life and the lifestyle. And it has great descriptions of New York City and kind of the people there and kind of the random things that maybe wouldn't necessarily matter in a more focused type of book and storytelling. There's a lot of great moments that are like you can feel that it's sort of just telling a story within the city, and the theme of feeling lost and feeling hopeless and without direction is pretty much the biggest theme in this book. And I think that maybe using like drugs as a tool to create that lost feeling. It is an honest one, but I don't really think that that's what makes this book endearing, or I don't think that it makes it good writing that way. Although the one thing I'll say, because of the second person, there is kind of a dissociation that happens when you use second person, when you say the main character is you. There's sort of a disassociation for me when I read it, which can kind of be tied to a lot of the themes of the book. And you could just say, oh yeah, it's drugs, but it's also like his wife left him. And so then he's kind of like trapped in this place, and it's almost like he's looking inward at this person that he doesn't really understand and has to reevaluate. But unfortunately, there's so many parts of his life that are being disrupted by his own kind of misbehavior, his own addictions, that cause him to like fail to connect with this person that is actually himself. We learn more and more about his own tragedies as the book goes on. It's not just as simple as the things I listed, but I'm not going to spoil them. But yeah, another part that I thought was one of the more enjoyable, entertaining parts that kind of is still under the lines of feeling lost and feeling disconnected is his job itself. He expresses multiple times that his real dream is to be a fiction writer and to work somehow in fiction. But instead, he's kind of stuck in this position that is actually obsessed with fact. So it's an irony. He's a fact checker. And basically all he does throughout the work week is read other people's work and check their facts and make sure that everything is true. But then also the irony of it is that a lot of the magazine's reputation, the publication's reputation, is almost dependent on him doing this thing that he feels no enthusiasm towards. I would say that's kind of actually the biggest plot development in the book, between his wife just like leaves him. I think she goes to Paris and then doesn't come back, but she's kind of looming in the early chapters, and then that part develops. But then his time at his place of business, working as a fact checker, is probably the number one developing plot. And just to say it again, it's so interesting having a character who wants to write fiction being stuck. The only job he can get even relatively close to the writing world is to be someone whose job only focuses in fact and checking facts, not even writing facts, but just checking them. It's kind of a beautiful irony. So yeah, that was probably the main developing plot for me. It's a pretty short book. It's only 180 pages, but plenty happens in it. And although I described it as kind of like a drifting lost narrative, it is very focused in what each chapter does story-wise. So it's definitely not like you're reading pages wondering why he's talking about what he's talking about. It's still very focused. All right, I need to move on to the other one, which I actually finished in December. So if I make mistakes, misremembering things, you can't be mad at me. But this book is a title called Snow Crash by an author named Neal Stephenson. And so I've been familiar with this author for a long time. He's sort of an innovator early on of like the sort of steampunk, cyberpunk, science fiction genre, which is my understanding. But anything that I expected out of this book in regards to what I knew about cyberpunk, steampunk, this book pretty much magnified it by about 1,000%. It's really hard to get wrap your head around this book and start to talk about it. Even in the back of the book, what he describes it as is like something that only happens in the very first chapter and then kind of gets lost in the remaining 450 pages of this book. So I think I actually even read the back of this like when I was reading this 6 months ago, but this is what it says. It says, in the near future, Americans excel at only two things: writing software and delivering pizzas in less than 30 minutes. which is a part of this book for literally the first chapter. Like the first scene is this main character trying to deliver a pizza on time, and then he fails, and then we literally do not see him delivering pizza ever again for the remaining like 400 pages. It's not really that big of a deal, except that that's how they're marketing it, which is kind of wild. I don't want to talk about a bunch of criticisms for this book because I did really enjoy it, but I think I watched a lot of videos of people talking about this book, and aside from it being present tense and that being daunting for some people, I think a lot of people are in agreement that there's a lot of crazy ideas in this book, and some of them go places and some of them do not. Like there will be chapters where the main character is like talking to an AI librarian about like theology, and it'll go on for like pages and pages. It's like, why is this happening in the book? I'm just going to at first do my best to describe the plot itself, which maybe will make things a little more clearly explaining why it's a difficult book and why it's also some people are fascinated with it. So a lot of the confusion with this book, I think, kind of comes down to how it takes place in two different worlds. And one world is like a computer, alternate reality, whatever you call it. This isn't really my world, no pun intended. But yeah, I think they're just called alternate realities, like within a computer, like where you wear like a headset or whatever. So that's part of the story. And then there's also the real world, which coincidentally is like the cyberpunk world that's happening in the future, where everything is also very technologically abstract and odd. For example, the high-speed pizza delivery trucks take place in the real world. And so there's like kind of a confusion there where both the reality and the alternate reality are places that readers are very unfamiliar with. And I think since there's both those things, and you have to come to an understanding of two different kind of quote-unquote realities, it becomes very confusing. So I guess depending on what type of reader you are, if you're a person who enjoys sci-fi and fantasy where the world is immersive but also cryptic, this Snow Crash book is sort of a 2-for-1 in that experience, where you have a cyberpunk world and then there are hackers in that world that create a separate world, and both of those worlds are very dense and vivid, but also very like you have to put effort into understanding them, which a lot of readers would really love that. Other readers, especially readers who have the slightest problem with present tense writing, might not really want to put the time into decoding this sort of book that has so much layers and so much abstraction in it. It did take me quite a while to get through this one, although it is one of the longest books I've read in a while anyway, almost at 500 pages. It did take me probably a few breaks to get through the whole thing. But I will say, if I'm going to recommend it, I would recommend it to people who enjoy language and people who enjoy kind of immersive worlds that are not necessarily clear. But the one thing that is very inspiring, and I'm definitely going to read some more of Neal Stephenson's work, is that I get the sense from this novel that he creatively did exactly what he wanted to do. And he is a person who comes up with very vivid ideas and imaginations. And it's just proof, despite the fact that it was published more than 30 years ago, it's just proof that there is a way to publish exactly what you want to publish. And you can still find your readership. People will be interested in it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be muted down just so that you are worried that like people might not want to put the work in. So if anything, this book is a testament to that. It's not the only one, but I think it's definitely like a cool thing to think that this book was written. It's so strange, and yet you can find it like at a bookstore in your city. And that's like kind of cool for artists to think about, like being able to do whatever your vision is. I'm going to close with one last thought on the initial concept of present tense. because both of these books are not just present tense, they are present tense and then other things that make them abstract. For example, Bright Lights Big City is present tense and second person, and then Snow Crash is like a long list of things that are abstract and confusion. I didn't even really get into some of the characters' names have like numbers in them. Some of them just have alter egos. Some of the characters are like just letters and stuff. So maybe my closing statement is that the type of writers who are more keen on experimenting probably choose things like present tense as opposed to past tense, because if you're going to do one untraditional thing like present tense, it's probably because you're already thinking outside of the box with how you want to tell your story anyway. And so if you do one thing, then chances are your creative vision is probably going to be drawn to other things that are also untraditional or abstract, which is kind of a cool thing. And I think that if you go all in with what you want to do, even if people are discouraged, if people really want to read your stuff or if they really want to connect with your stuff, things like tense aren't gonna make them put your book down. Like, the right people are gonna read your stuff. And if it's not tense, then it might just be some other part that the readers don't want to read or don't like about your writing. Like, you could write past tense and there's some other thing that they are gonna freaking complain about, right? It's hard out there. All right, that's all I got. I will talk to you guys another time. All right, goodbye.